And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Pandorum. This is a game from Cosmodrome Games. This is one of their games that has not got as much buzz. They have Aquatica, and they have Smartphone. A lot of people talk about those. This is one here where you're colonizing a planet, landing on a planet and going around and just mining stuff. That's pretty much it. Building, I think the planet itself is uninhabited, so you're just going around and strip mining the joint. This is a kind of an abstract strategy game in a sense that you're moving one piece around the board, your lander, and trying to build different things on spots that allow you to play cards to give you victory points. Here's how it plays. At the beginning of the game, you're going to build a random board. These have two sides, and you can put them in here in different order. You'll be putting volcanoes on top of these spaces here, and these basically are just going to be blocking line of sight. There's also another area, Perium, that people can go to. And the goal of this game is to get victory points, which is essentially money. And you are going to be moving around and building these little bases here. You have small ones and large ones, and you're going to be able to build both of those as the game goes by. The game length is going to be determined by the number of modules and bases that you have. It will be a different number based on the number of players. Each player also has a board which is going to give you special abilities. You're going to put it together, two different pieces, and then on the top here also some bonus points at the end of the game. So you'll have all this put together, and each person will have a randomized custom board, as well as some cards in their hand. Now on a player's turn, they can do one of two different actions. They can either take two cards. So you basically just take two cards. You can see there's a pile of face-up cards here, which will grow or get smaller as the game goes by. You can take two of these cards. You can also take them from the top of the deck. And after taking cards, if there is less than 4 different cards out there, then you'll draw and replace them. So that's one thing you're going to do. The other thing that you're going to do, which will happen and is a big part of the game, is moving your harvester. When you move a harvester, you need to discard a card from your hand, and you discard it face up into the area where people can take cards. So that's a card that someone else can use. Whatever card you discard does not matter. You can then take your harvester and you can move in a straight line. Can't go through volcanoes. And then where you stop, something will happen. If you land on somebody else's base or module that they have on the board, you are going to have to pay them for landing on their spot. But that will likely not happen. Instead, you'll usually land on an empty spot, and then you're going to have the opportunity to build. So you can build either a module or a base, and the way you determine that is you will either discard one card or two cards. When you discard a card to build on a spot, the icons need to match. So if I'm building on this green spot right here, I can use this card because it shows that green spot. I can also use this one because it's wild and can be used to build anywhere. Each time you play a card for building, it's going to score you points. So essentially, the best way to think about this is if I decide that I'm going to build. So if yellow moves here and decides to build, and I build a base here and it lets me do two cards, that's allowing me to score twice. And cards will score different ways. So take Q, which is points in this game, or money, for each of your opponents that are adjacent. You get 1 for each of your opponent's modules and 2 for each of your opponent's adjacent bases. Well, that's probably not the best card to play this one. This one says get 1 for each adjacent blue space. Well, there's 1 blue space adjacent to that. But had I decided to build it here, if I went here, it would be adjacent to 2. So maybe on my first turn, I'd move here and build just a small module here. It would be adjacent to 2 of these blue spaces, and I'd get rid of this one single card. And you're trying to get cards that are going to score you points. Like, for example, this one gives you a point for each adjacent base. Doesn't matter whose color it is. The red ones give you points for your opponents. Here, get points for each of your own bases that are placed on yellow spots. You hear the green ones give you points if they're adjacent to your own. Sometimes here, these will give you 2, or you get an upgrade card. Here, you get points for each of your bases built on a straight line from this hex when it's placed. So there's all sorts of things, and you got to figure out the best ways to score as you place them. The cards that you discard when you build a base or a module are going to go underneath your player board, and there are 3 different spots that you can put these cards. Now on the first spot, whenever you put cards here, as the game progresses, you can spend 2 cards to get a special ability, like this jump drive, which lets you move from one spot to another spot. In this spot here, the second spot, once you have 4 cards there total, you now have a permanent special ability. So this is when you collect cards, you get an extra card. And then over here, you're going to get points at the end of the game for each icon of which you have the most of. So if I have 3 red icons and I have the most, I'll get 3 points at the end of the game. Also, depending on what top you took, you'll get an extra point for each icon that matches that at the end of the game in that area. So you're scoring points during the game, but then the cards, you decide whether I want to have one-time use abilities, whether I want a permanent special ability, or I just want to put them here and try to score points that way. The game is going to end when someone has built all of their stuff, and then you'll finish out the round, and whoever has the most points wins. A few other things: you can spend an extra card when moving to jump to any spot on Pandorum, and then when leaving Pandorum you can spend 1 card again, and it costs 2 cards to move, and you can jump to any spot here on the main board. The plastic pieces for the game are nice. They're these little plastic, we got these modules and bases here. They're nice, they're easy to see, and you can tell which one's small, which one's big. That's all that matters. And then you have these nice big things moving around. The boards, as I said, you'll be able to rotate them and put them in different ways, and so each game's going to be different. You have these volcanoes, which are simply here to block spots, and they just are 2 pieces that slide together. They're okay, The quid or the coins, that looks good. It's good quality coins. And then the cards themselves. I really like the cards. I like how the different colors mean something. Green is being next to your own bases. Yellow has the science, and purple is this, red is somebody else. And they have some really cool art on them. There are cards that are exactly the same. It tells you how many cards in the deck there are of a specific card. And they're also good quality cards. I was pretty impressed with the component quality. The only thing I would argue about was there's a lot of symbology here. These aren't always easy to understand. You can look it up in the book. There's a description of the permanent effects and a description of the one-time effects. But that would have been nicer to maybe put on the back of the book instead of the list of backers. The rules themselves, there was a few small errors. I think it's translational most part. But I like it. And the thing I like the most, honestly, is I like how in the inside of the box, it just looks cool. It's a really cool inside of a box. They also have achievements and ways to play solo with an artificial opponent, so that's in the game too. Alrighty, well there you have it, Pandorum. Now, the space theme is kind of just this glossed over topping on top of the game. It's really just trying to figure out where you move your piece so you can maximize points scored. So the game has these 2 halves, right, where you're taking cards and then playing cards. You're not allowed to move your lander unless you land on one of your own spots, and then you're going to move to another spot. It's basically so you can go and turn, because you go in straight lines, or land on someone else's to pay them. But usually when you move, you're building one of your things, and you're just trying to maximize points. This is the kind of game, Small World's another game that reminds me of this, where essentially every turn that you move, you score points. You want to get the most you can. You can get, at the beginning you might just get 2 or 3 points. But especially when you play the base, which lets you play 2 cards, you could get 12 points or whatever. You can get a good chunk of points if you play your cards right. And so you have to figure out, okay, I want to move here, I'm going to collect these cards. I like that concept. It's not a deep strategical game, but nicely tactical. I can sit there and say, okay, I want to play this card. I need to maneuver to get to the right spot. There's a little bit of interaction. A lot of the cards have to do with your opponent's bases, and someone may go to a spot you want. But for the most part, it's just moving around and trying to find the best way to score points. Then this coupled with, what do you do with the cards you spend? Do you want to put them in that one-time special ability, which can be pretty powerful, the permanent special ability, which is decent, and I'm not quite sure they're balanced, but if they're imbalanced, it's just a little bit different. Or do you want to try to get points at the end of the game? The whole thing is not that long of a game. It says 60 minutes here in the box, but it's probably 45 minutes. It depends on how thinky everybody is. I also think it scales nicely because even with 4 people all moving around, it never felt like I never felt like the board was too crowded. Even if you got stuck, you could always jump to that other site that's off the board and then jump back on another place. Collecting the cards, trying to figure out the best combo to play. You're never going to make these huge epic combos, but you always make some sort of combo that works, and it's entertaining. I don't know how long of legs the game has, but I thought it was a lot of fun. That's Pandorum. Dice Tower Judgment approved.